This is an oral history project
Just keep going.
interview conducted for the Witness to War Serving a Nation project at Nauset Regional High School on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. For the sake of the interview, please state your full name and the community in which you now reside.
Anthony O'Brien, Pembroke, Mass.
So, during middle or high school, did you do any sports?
I did. I wasn't much of an athlete, honestly. I tried all the stuff that boys are supposed to try and do. Baseball, football, basketball, and I really wasn't that good at it. Did you want me to say yes or no, or do you want me to explain a little bit?
Try and go into detail,
Yeah.
I guess.
Okay, so that's what I was doing. And I tried sports, and I really wasn't that good, honestly, at sports. When I was in school, and so I actually ended up switching to theater and got involved with singing and dancing and shows and acting, and actually took a liking to it. That was inspired by my dad, who was also a veteran, and he was in the Marine Corps during the Korean War. He's still alive now and is doing very, very well at 80. And he was into theater, and he did that kind of as a hobby on the side, despite all of his busyness. He inspired me to get into it, and it was kind of an alternative to sports because I wasn't sports and I just weren't getting along. I was basically on the fourth string of the freshman football team, and they only had 2 strings. Went into theater and loved it and had a great time with it, and it also helped me develop my personality quite a bit, and my ability to be more comfortable with public speaking, because you got to do a lot of that stuff when you're an actor and a singer and a dancer and doing chorus. You also learn to work as a team, just like you do in sports. I mean, when you're doing dance chorus, not tap dance chorus, I mean, you've got to be in sync. You got to be, standardized, and just like you got to do in any team. So I think it gave me a lot of great exposure to those important skills that I've used all my life, every day, and I was grateful for those experiences.
When you were about to join the military, what were your initial feelings?
My story's slightly interesting in that regard. I was going to enlist in the service out of high school. I was about to do that. My dad was in the Marines, as I mentioned, so I was gravitating to the Marine Corps. I didn't really know a lot about the differences between the services. I think most of us know that the Navy has big ships, the Air Force has airplanes, and then kind of everything in the middle is kind of like, I don't think when you're 17 you know that much about it. So I was going to enlist. My dad was an enlisted guy, and no disrespect to any enlisted folks. I was an officer my entire career, and with the success and things that I accomplished, I stand on the shoulders of the enlisted guys that worked for me. Because in a large degree they made me what I was, and I'm grateful for that. But what my dad recommended is, he says, look, you went to a prep school. I went to Cardinal Spellman High School in Brockton, which is considered like a prep school for college, and I did well there. And he said, look, you got management material, you got management potential. You really ought to think about going to college, and then if you want to join the service as an officer. Now, at the time, I didn't know what he meant, because I didn't know what the difference was between an enlisted person and an officer. And even as much as he tried to explain it to me, it didn't kind of sink in. You're 17, you think you know everything, you really know nothing. And I didn't too. But it was one of the best pieces of advice I ever got. And again, that's no disrespect to the enlisted folks, but I ended up going to college, ended up joining the service as an officer, and no regrets about that whatsoever. Although I don't, if someone wants to enlist, that can work out too, because there's a lot of great options if they have potential to become an officer, to get to there eventually, and a lot of great roads to do that on that I would recommend to somebody.
So how did your parents feel about you joining?
Moms, you gotta love moms, you gotta love women, and they're more emotional, and that's a good thing, because we need that. And, my mom had reservations. That's what moms do. She had reservations about one of her kids joining the service and the types of things that can happen when you go into the service, to include getting into a combat situation, to include being exposed to greater risk. And that's totally understandable. So she was very concerned about that, but also, like a great mom too, wanted me to be happy, and if I wanted to pursue a certain professional goal, then it certainly was something that nobody could argue wasn't honorable. It was honorable. So she was supportive of that. My dad had similar reservations, just not to such a high degree, and also he had a lot more pride in it being that I was joining the Marine Corps and he was in the Marine Corps. So that's kind of a legacy and a heritage in our family that he was kind of proud to see me continue. However, he had some reservations too, and I think that's very normal. When I joined the service in 1981, after I graduated from college, Stonehill College, here on the South Shore, the world and the country had some turmoil where the military, was always on the edge and going in and out of risky situations, and certainly it is now. Here it is 2016, and the Middle East is a huge, huge problem, as are other areas in the world where it's certainly a tough time to join the military. But I have family members who are younger, and also other friends who frequently ask me for their advice on whether they should join and what to do if they want to join, etc. I've got a nephew that just got accepted this week to the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, which is kind of a huge, huge deal. So, and that's kind of inspiring too. It's nice to be an inspiration to others, but then, it kind of comes around too when they achieve something like being accepted to the Naval Academy, which of course is only step one. He's got a long road ahead of him too, but it could be a great road.
So who most influenced you to join?
My dad. My dad was a veteran. We have a lot of family members from our family that were in the service. His brothers all joined. He had 3 brothers. They all joined the service. He had cousins that joined the service. I've got many cousins that joined the service as well. So a lot of family members were in the service. Interesting, different jobs. One of my uncles was commanding officer of the USS Constitution in Boston, which is still the longest serving active duty ship in the United States Navy and in any Navy in the world. So that's pretty prestigious. Also, another uncle was a Vietnam linguist and handled prisoners during the war in Vietnam and spoke the language and was able to do interrogator translator type of skills that were critical. What else? My other uncle's son was a Top Gun pilot in the Navy. So if you've seen the movie, Tom Cruise's movie Top Gun, the famous Navy aviation movie, which was super and indicative of the kind of things they were doing. I have a cousin that did that, and others. My dad was in the Marine Corps in Korea as an aviation ordnance man, so he was putting rockets and missiles on airplanes that were going into harm's way. I think the number one inspiration was my dad, who was in the Marine Corps.
All right. If you can, what kind of training did you have to do after enlisting?
Basic training, of course, which otherwise known as boot camp. But I went through officer basic training, which is normally somewhere between 10 and 12 weeks. It's your initial orientation and indoctrination in the military, so you got to get comfortable pretty quickly with somebody in your face yelling and screaming, but that's all part of the game. I mean, like any project that you have, you're trying to get something done. You keep your eye on the prize, which is graduation day, and they can only do so much for so long. And then if you accomplish everything they ask you to accomplish, it's gonna work out well. So that was my initial training, and then after that you go to specialty training. I went into the infantry, and I was an infantry officer for 7 years in the Marine Corps, and infantry school was, I think, 8 or 9 weeks. Pretty intensive stuff where they train you to be an infantry officer, and they teach you about the weapons and tactics and types of things that infantry units use, communications and logistics. And a lot of planning issues, which was a lot of fun. But I had an interesting career too, because I did 7 years in the Marine Corps, and then I did I served for 14 years in the Navy as a Navy SEAL. So when I switched from one service to the other, I had to go to basic training in the Navy as well. So I went to basic SEAL training, which was that's 26 weeks long. So I call it 6 months. And some of the toughest training, honestly, in the world. So I'm proud of having got through that. had a few highlights during that training as well. What we like to call gut checks, where they kind of check you out to see how badly you want it from day to day, as well as how badly you want to graduate. And that's good because if you want to test somebody, especially when you're testing them for one of the most ultimate challenges that you can have, which is serving in combat, and then not only serving in combat, but making sure you get yourself and your unit home alive, which is job number one for me and always has been, including during the course of my three combat tours. The initial training was critical, and then we had advanced training beyond that, and that just made me better, highly skilled, and was able to make me as successful as we were able to be.
So, can you describe what it was like to fight?
Yeah, it's it's actually a little overrated. 3 combat tours, several skirmishes or firefights or interactions, if you will, with the enemy. First in Kuwait during Desert Storm with the Iraqis while we were liberating Kuwait from their invasion in 1991. Then in Kosovo during 2001, where we were working along the Serbian border and basically chasing smugglers out of the area that were helping enemy units with regards to medication and weapons and supplies, etc. And then lastly in Iraq, when I was working security work there with the Marines. And it's you do a lot of training for it, you do a lot of preparation for it, and then and we're very lucky. We are America. There's no military on the planet that comes close to almost anything and everything we can do. We're incredibly well funded, which we thank our taxpayers for. We're incredibly well respected by everybody throughout the world. And when I go on a mission, I've got air support, whether it be helicopters if we need to get out of there quick, whether it be fighter aircraft in case we need to have coverage to get in or out, or we get in a pickle, that will help us get out of there, as well as naval gunfire from ships, as well as other special operations units that help us do what we do. But, so 7 years in the Marines, 14 years in the Navy, served 21 years total, and have, several minutes of interaction with enemy forces where they shoot at us, we shoot at them. We get done what we need to get done, and I'm here, we're here, and they're not, and that's kind of the way it is. It's not fun. It's not something that you look back on with a whole lot of pride of we beat them or they lost to us or anything like that. But there's also folks that got into similar situations that didn't come home alive. And that's tough. That's tough to deal with, and we do, and then we carry on. But I'm proud of how we performed when we did. One of my greatest accomplishments in my time in service is that I got all of my units that were in combat situations. Everybody got out unharmed. We didn't lose anybody, and I'm exceptionally proud of that.
What was your rank?
I was in the Marine Corps. My highest rank was I was an officer, both in the Marines and then an officer in the Navy. Not at the same time. Did the Marine Corps first. In the Marine Corps, my highest rank was a captain, and then I transferred over to the Navy, and my highest rank in the Navy was lieutenant commander, and I retired as lieutenant commander in the Navy SEALs after 21 years.
What was the most challenging task you've completed?
Probably we had some training that was as challenging and maybe more challenging than a lot of combat situations that I've been in and that others have been in, because that's the nature of that's one of the reasons why special operations units in the United States military are so good. The quality and the stressfulness of our training is quite significant. And it's intended to be that way, so that when you get into a bad situation, you've got a place back in your mind where you can say, I've either been there, I've been there, something similar to that, and so we're going to get through this. We're going to get through it individually. We're going to get through it together. And the military isn't the only place that trains that way. I mean, a lot of awesome civilian positions. Whether you're a doctor, helping people and saving people, nurses, and all kinds of other important professions. They do a lot of the same thing. You do hard training so that when you get into a highly stressful situation in your profession, you can handle it better. You certainly don't want to be undertrained when it comes, go time or game day, then it's kind of like, oh, jeepers, I wish we had done whatever. I wish we had trained harder. So a lot of our training is highly stressful, and we do a lot of stuff underwater, and I don't mean just wearing scuba tanks where you have air. I'm talking about where you're holding your breath. You've got to swim distances. You've got to solve problems underwater, and you're under the gun, so you have to accomplish things and hold your breath. A lot of that kind of stuff in our basic training in SEAL training. Graduation run is 14 miles in soft sand. Try it out sometime. A lot of fun. And graduation swim is 6 miles. That's after 6 months of training. So we work from zero, and the first swim training is a couple hundred yards in a pool, and then we work our way up to it. But if you don't pass those standards on the swim and the run, then you don't graduate. Same thing with shooting things that we do, scenarios that we do, where we got to go in and grab a good guy, grab a bad guy, and solve a problem. Maybe take out a communications site so that larger forces can come into that area and accomplish a bigger mission. We usually work in small units, so we can't be on the ground for very long in bad guy country because we don't have a lot to defend ourselves. One of the most important things you can do is know your own limitations and capabilities. When you got 4-man team, 8-man team, 16-man team, you can't be going into an area that's got hundreds of bad guys. You're gonna be in a problem. How's that?
That's good.
Did you serve with any friends?
I think, Tony, you have to get going.
No, I'm good. I'm
You
good.
show up.
I'm good. Yeah. Where are we? Yep, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah. Did I serve?
Did you serve with any friends, or did you make any good friends while you were serving?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. The military is like all professions where your colleagues that you work with, whether they be teachers, whether they be in the medical field, etc. You get very close to your folks. We probably more so than others because of the stressfulness of some of these situations. When it's time to knock off and then go home, you get close. You hang out after work, especially when you're overseas and you're not with your family. What are you going to do after work? You're going to go relax, work out, do something in recreation, maybe go get a drink or whatever. You can do that kind of stuff together. And even more so, importantly, when you're overseas, because a lot of these places that we go overseas, even when we're off duty, it's also dangerous. So you don't be going out in town or going off duty by yourself. So you got to have your buddies with you. So it's almost a 24/7 kind of existence. So you're working in very close quarters. I've been on the top of hills in Korea, looking over positions where we were maybe doing reconnaissance and taking notes on aircraft that were coming in and that were going out, and sleeping next to 2 or 3 other guys. When we can't move, we're living underneath a tree in a heavy foliage area. We're going to the bathroom in a hole a few feet away, hopefully downwind. That's a joke. So you get real close with folks. Pretty much unlike a whole lot of other professions. So your buddies, we call them swim buddies, but you get real close to your teammates. They do become friends. They become lifelong friends. I'm in touch with a lot of folks, and since I got out, which has now been 13 years, now there's Facebook. It's so much easier to keep in touch with people who are great distances away, as most are, because folks that join the military come from all over the country. And then most of them go back home to where they're from. So tremendous friendships, and honestly, one of the neatest and best things about having served is those bonds. And I'm lucky because although I know other units that had that lost folks, and there's nothing in the military that's much harder than that. Is when you lose your friends. I was lucky that although I didn't lose any in combat, I did lose a couple friends during, either our training experiences, may have, got killed or passed away or whatever, and it's a bummer. And, what can you do? You remember them, and then you got to move on.
Who had the greatest impact on you during your service?
The guys I worked with, because they are that, because we're that close. The guys I worked with, the guys that helped me be as good as I could be. When I was in SEAL Team still is that way. And when I say guys, I mean guys. There's no women working with you in the combat units. There's plenty that are working in support, and we're very helpful in many ways. But that's the law, as it has been and still is, that it's an all male unit. They're working on changing that. I don't know of any females that have tried out to go to SEAL Team. If they want to, have at it. But my guys inspired me. I always wanted to represent them well. They were doing a great job for me. I wanted to do a great job for them. And then, kind of like I talked about earlier too, when you lose somebody that you know, that's a source of inspiration too. It makes you want to work harder, be better, make sure everyone else is. If something happened on that op that where mistakes might have been made or circumstances may have developed that could have been foreseen or anticipated. Let's make sure we don't make this, have the same thing happen to our guys. So learn from it, if anything.
What SEAL team were you on?
I started with SEAL Team 5. I also worked with SDV Team, SEAL Team 5 is in San Diego, SDV Team 1, which is in Hawaii. And SEAL Delivery Vehicle teams operate mini submersibles underwater, and do a lot of neat long range operations underwater, either going to beaches or going to ships or etc. to solve problems there. And then my last team was SEAL Team 2 that I worked with in Kosovo. SEAL Team 2 is in Norfolk, Virginia.
Did you earn any medals while doing?
Yeah, you get medals if you hang around long enough. They give you that sort of thing, and if you do a good enough job. I was fortunate enough to not only was I fortunate enough to get a few medals, not just for myself as an individual, but also for our units. They also have what's known as there's individual awards, personal awards. Then there's also unit awards, but then they also have campaign awards. So if you served like Desert Storm or Kosovo or wherever, there's individual awards for that. So sometimes you can go do something for a few months, and you probably get more than to some of us that have been in a long time. I mean, when you get 3 or 4 medals for what seems to be the same thing, that's the system. I'm too busy to try to address that issue then and now. But the neatest part was being able to be at a level where I could get awards for other folks and give them awards, because and fortunately I worked for a couple bosses too that were more than a couple bosses who were very good about that sort of thing. That I didn't have to always be the one that was initiating. Look, we got some guys that did a good job here. Can I put them in for something? Frequently, I worked for some really good folks, high-ranking folks, admirals and generals, who came to me and said, "Hey, you guys did a good job. If I don't see X number of medals coming from your unit, you're gonna have a problem. So make sure I see that." And I was like, "Absolutely, Admiral. We'll get it done." And I was at the level where I would have to do a lot of writing to make that happen. Enjoyed every second of it. Honestly, wish I could have done more, but did probably better than average. So, that's a nice part of it. And it looks great on your uniform, and it's nice to have it. And it's just a nice way to say there's a lot of professions, including the military, where it's not enough folks saying, "Hey, thanks a lot for what you did," and that's a nice way to do it. And I enjoyed that.
What was your happiest experience?
Happiest experience? Well, probably. I was a Navy SEAL, so the takeaway from my 21 years in the service, certainly, I don't want to piss off any of my Marine Corps friends by saying, the SEALs are better than Marines. So I think that becoming a SEAL was more important. I don't want to say that. So I would say that graduating from basic training and becoming a Marine, or in my case a Marine officer, which is the same thing, as well as graduating from basic training in the SEALs and becoming a SEAL, were certainly my favorite accomplishments in the service. After 21 years, you get to do a lot of things in the service, and I'm proud of them all. And it's kind of like, you never ask a parent who their favorite child is. So asking me to pick which one, was the best is kind of like that. So I'd have to say there's at least a tie between becoming a Marine and becoming a SEAL. We're pretty neat.
Do you have any dark moments?
Yeah, and that's a tricky question because first of all, I don't know exactly what you mean by dark, but I think I do. I'm pretty sure I do. And that's a tricky question to ask a veteran, especially a combat veteran, because most of your dark moments are going to come from combat experiences. When you are in a combat situation and bad guys are firing at you and you're firing at them, and everybody's fighting to stay alive, make sure that they don't, unfortunately, because that's the only way I'm walking out of there. Then it gets tricky and it gets tough because people get hurt, and I didn't enjoy shooting at somebody and, if necessary, killing them. And I'm not going to tell you that and once in a while you think about that sort of thing because those are extraordinary moments in your life that you don't forget. And so those moments are dark, as are the moments that you recall them when you get out. And I would submit that that's a tricky question to ask a veteran. I commend you for doing it, but I would also advise, caution because, there's some things that most veterans don't like to talk about. I'm not comfortable talking about it either. I'll talk about it if I have to. But it's tough. That's why it's dark.
How did you feel on your way home from war?
Great. It's that's always a good one when it's something like that's in your rearview mirror and you're on your way home, and you're sitting in an airplane seat or on a ship. That's a lot better than being in a box, because you quickly learn from your experiences that every day on this side of the grass is better than the alternative. So you feel great. It's like it's got to be the same as winning the Super Bowl or something really, really whatever accomplishment you got that's big. It's kind of like that, and it's nice now because the American public has learned a lot of lessons from the way we treated our vets in Vietnam and how they came home and were not treated well. So we're treated better now, and to our Vietnam veterans friends, we say welcome home, but and thank you for your service as well. And we get a lot of that now, and the American public is incredibly supportive of us. So it was a great feeling. If you got anybody out there that answers this question with "Oh no, it felt like crap," let me know. We'll get them some. We'll get them some therapy. It's kind of a no-brainer. It was a good feeling, especially when you didn't lose somebody. For the folks that tougher ride home when you lost somebody. That's tough because when that happens, I have to imagine that you kind of leave some of you back there. Kind of getting dark again. But that's the reality of the stuff. It's not it's not selling widgets at Kmart.
So, was your military experience a positive or negative one?
Oh, total positive. Yeah, it's defined my life so far, and very positive. And I've also felt an obligation to use it for good since I've been out. I do a lot of volunteer work and community service with different organizations, mostly veterans organizations, for vets, on behalf of vets, and then for also other things that are tied to vets, but not vets exclusively. I've done a lot of work with homeless shelters and food pantries and stuff like that. And I come from a family that's done that, all my life too. So I've got a calling for that sort of thing. But definitely a positive. I'm lucky to be here. I've had a couple near-death experiences myself, and so I mean, I grew up Christian, so there's always a little bit of an angle there that I go to that helps me deal with that. But I think it's important to give back, make a difference. I know people use that, you know, that a lot of that stuff is cliches and slogans. You know, for me, it's real, and I don't go around bragging about it, but you're asking about it. So it was totally, it was very much positive.
If someone asked you to participate in the military again today, what would you say?
I would say, you know, it's a personal decision. If you want to do it, I support it. If you don't, I support it. I mean, on occasion, I had a meeting last week with a kid and his parents. He wants to join the service, perhaps go SEAL team, maybe not. Mom was sitting there, you know, here we are having pizza, and she had reservations, even expressed them. And I was kind of like, well, guys, this is up to you, you know. And you know, you could tell that the kid wanted to go in, and you know, she was getting a little strong on the way she was expressing herself. And I said, you know, look, Mom, you guys got to figure this out on your own. But he's an adult now. If I'm not mistaken, he was like 23. And I was like, you know, if he really wants to do this, I'd recommend you support it. But you know, if you're not going to go in that direction, you know, then you guys got to work it out. I get it, and you know, he's going to have to figure out in his matrix of, you know, what matters, what elements matter in his final decision. And you know, I mean, I hope his mom's opinion matters, but this clearly was a kid that you know, had a very strong feeling about going in. He just wanted to make the right decision on which direction he was going to go when he joined. It didn't sound like it was an if. So I mean, if he already had his mind made up, I mean, you know, Mom, it's kind of, you know, it's kind of time to get on board. So I get those questions all the time. And I'm very open-minded about, and I've worked with all the services and a lot of different folks in all the services, so I got a lot of experience and knowledge that I can give you about those sort of things. One of my favorite questions for others and myself that served is, you know, if you had to do it all over again, what would you have done? And I probably wouldn't have done what I did the same way, honestly. Yeah, and look, since Korea, only 2% of the American public is served. So just service of any sort, any branch, any job is a really, really cool thing. I have a nephew that just graduated from Air Force ROTC out at South Dakota State University. Wants to fly C-130 transport airplane. You know, huge supporter of his. Go for it. You know, so what? He's not a Navy SEAL. He's not a Marine. Hey, he's a patriot. And you know, you hear a lot about the millennials, and you know, they're this and they're that, and you know, some of it's not positive. And then I talk about, you know, kids like my nephew Aaron and others that I've referred to in this interview, you know, who are quite representative of the generation and doing really well. I got a couple of the nephews that are serving in the Coast Guard, and so you know, and again, I want to be an inspiration for them, and they're inspiring me to keep doing what I'm doing, because it's nice to pass the torch and see good folks, you know, carrying on the legacy.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thanks for allowing me to do this, and good luck to you guys and everyone else involved in the project.
Thanks.
Okay, God bless America.